All right, this is Jeff Zimmerman with FightNews.com. I'm with the living legend, Nonito Donaire, the Filipino Flash. How you doing, Nonito?
Man, I feel great, man. I'm so blessed, and thank you for having me.
Hey, man, it's an honor to have you. I know we've run into each other through the years, Nevada Boxing Hall of Fame, and just at the last Canelo fight in Vegas, and it's always great to see you.
No, likewise, man. Likewise, this is always fun. It's always fun.
Yeah, in fact, I remember a Manny Pacquiao fight, and I saw you with the photographers ringside taking pictures. I looked over and I did a double take here in Dallas, and I'm like, "Wait, is that Nonito?" And you kind of
No,
winked over at me.
photography, man. I haven't done it in a while, but it's something that when I feel like I need to relax, I'm doing it. I love photography.
Yeah, it was pretty cool to see you in that element. But listen, man, like I said, you're a living legend. You've kind of lived two careers. I think you might have had a Hall of Fame career the first half, and you're going through another Hall of Fame career the second half. Somewhat unprecedented, but there's a lot of people. You've been around for a long time, but there's a lot of new people to boxing. You started, you were from the Philippines, but can you talk about kind of your story and just kind of how you got into the sport?
Well, I mean, I remember back in the days when my father in the street, in the Philippines, in the street, he'll just put a glove on and everybody's fighting everybody, So I'll fight other kids and stuff like that, and that was something like that. That when he would come home from the military, that's he had gloves with him, and he'd have the neighbors box each other in the streets, and he wasn't cemented. It was like rocky streets and dirt streets and all that stuff, and we'd go at it, but I didn't, it was just one of those things that my dad was like, oh, let's just put a gloves in you and box this other kid, And then when we moved to the United States, it was just more of my dad looking at me, that I got into boxing is because I wanted him to be proud of me. He loved boxing, and when my brother was boxing before I did, he there was a lot of pride. There was a pride. He was very proud of my brother, And so I wanted some of that, being the little kid, and being the scrawny little kid. I wanted to be, hey, pops, I'm here too, So we ended up, I ended up boxing, because of that, and somehow, some way, we figured out that I was really good at it, So that's when it started for me.
How did you know? When did you know that you were really good at it? Because you did well in the amateurs, but when did it like really click?
It's funny because even when after I beat Darchinyan, like I still wasn't confident in myself. It was when I started to go into the journey of finding out why I box. For a long time, it was for my dad. For a long time, it was for everybody else. And I met my wife, and she had asked me, why do you box? What's the reason for you boxing? Because she'd see me dragging my feet in the gym, right? And so she had that question of why I box, and I couldn't answer it. I'm like, I don't know, and that's when I started getting into the journey of fighting everybody and training and loving the training and figuring out that I love what I do, and that's when I learned that I was good at what I did. But even before that, it was very difficult for me to say it for myself because I wasn't confident when I went in the ring. It was more of a survival mode, to winning. I was fast, I was quick, and didn't want to get hit. But it came to a point where I love boxing, and sometimes I don't mind getting hit anymore, which is kind of, it got me those great fights, that's for sure.
Right, right. And we're going to talk about some of that. And you got the nickname Filipino Flash, which has to be one of the best nicknames maybe ever in boxing, with the Hitman, Iron Mike, Sugar Ray. I mean, I can probably go down the list, but when did that nickname come?
In school, I would just keep running. My dad never want me to play basketball or play football. I might jam my finger, so he'd written a note for the PE teacher that I'd do my running. So for PE, that's what I did. It was ran for an hour, the whole time, and And when I would play with them, I had such great stamina because I'm always running. I'm all over the place. I'm always in shape that they'd find me to the left and they'd find me to the right because I'm like running all over the place. And that's when they started calling me, man, you're like a Flash, man, you're Flash. And then the Filipino came in because my brother was known as the Filipino bomber, you know, and added the Filipino in the Flash. But before that, it was always just the Flash. And between me and Andre Ward, we were known as the Fast and the Flash, you know. Before he was SOG, he was known as the Fast, and he was always the Fast and the Flash, or the Flash and the Fast, you know. And that's how we were known in the amateurs.
And for those that don't know, you ended up in the Bay Area, San Leandro, and I think I probably told you once or twice before that I lived in the Bay Area, so very familiar with that neck of the woods.
Yeah. So, I mean, we went to the King's Gym. Before that, we were at US Karate and Boxing in Hayward. That's where I started boxing, and then when we got serious in amateurs, that's when we moved to Fruitvale in Oakland, the King's Gym, you know, the famous King's Gym.
Yeah, and Fruitvale became a movie, I recall, like maybe 10 years ago or something, that whole area.
Oh, man.
Yeah, that's great. And also, Nonito, you know, in today's world of protected records and trying to keep that zero, you know, by your name and things like that, you know, it's kind of a different era. You're like Bernard Hopkins, another living legend going into the Hall of Fame this year. You lost your second pro fight. He lost his first pro fight.
Yeah, I mean, you learn a lot from it. You know, my second pro fight, when I lost, I thought it was the end of the world, you know, and I just kept trying. I just kept trying and quit here and there a couple of times before I started to just really venture in it deeper, you know, into the boxing world. And that's when I took everything so serious, and everything was boxing. Eat, sleep, everything boxing, you know. And but ultimately, you know, those hurdles early on is what made us great, you know, because we went past through it. You know, a lot of guys that fall in the later of their career, they start to spiral down because they don't know why. You know, they have that question of why. You know, at least when you do it early, you learn the valuable lessons, you know, that goes along with the hurdles.
So, I mean, in a sense, it was maybe a blessing in disguise. You're not where you're at unless you take that loss early.
Well, it's everything is a blessing in disguise if you turn that experience into a blessing. You know, that's the choices that we have as human beings is, you know, when we fall, you know, and it's very difficult for us to get up, but we always have the choice to get up, you know, and if you learn to look at it where you can get up and look at it to a point that it's a blessing, then you can get up even stronger than before. You know, when I lost to Inoue, people thought I was done, you know, because it was a rough fight, it was a tough fight, but I came in stronger this last two fights, and I'm coming in stronger with him the next time.
Yeah, you had, I think, 2 4-round knockouts since that loss to Inoue. So pretty crazy. But listen, you know, I mentioned at the onset, you've been a pro since 18. You're 39 years old. You fought a who's who. I don't know if you ever, you know, think about it. You're just kind of living in the moment. But you went from flyweight to featherweight. You've been bantamweight, super bantamweight. You mentioned Darchinian early for your first world title. Montiel, Arce, who it feels like forever ago, you know, he was doing what he did. Nicholas Walters, who was kind of a boogeyman back then, Frampton, Rigondeaux, and the monster Inoue. I mean, just when you hear those names, I mean, what comes to mind?
You know, I just look at them with a lot of respect. You know, when I hear those names, you know, they were great fighters. You know, they're good fighters. They're great fighters. They were fun to be in the ring with. You know, but yeah, it's just I guess for me it's just blessings. You know, that I got to do what I did with those guys. You know, and you know, be it a win or a loss, you know, it was still fun, and it was still a great experience that allowed me to be here.
Yeah, and those weren't fights where one guy was, too old, or I mean, you guys, these were prime time. You know, you guys were in your prime during the. I mean, well, you're still in your prime, but you know,
Exactly.
both of
Get
you
it,
were in your
get it
prime.
right. Get it right, Jeff.
Hey, I'm a little slow. I'm a little bit older, but yeah, I mean, you guys were both in your prime in all those fights.
Yeah. Yep. And you know, and it's so crazy because I don't know what it is. I don't know what life is going on right now, or the alignment of the universe or whatever it may be. But I feel so much stronger, man. I feel so much stronger. My training is so much different. My stamina is on a different level. I mean, I feel really good, man. I feel really good, and my performance in sparring hasn't. You know, people would always beat me up in sparring because I always, you know, I'm a counter puncher, so I always just have this little tiny movement. But in sparring, they catch me because of the gloves and the headgear. But in the fight, I get away from it because, you know, it's just that's why I you know, I can counter so effectively because I have those little subtle movement that allows me to counter real fast, you know. But now I'm doing a lot better in sparring, you know. I mean, I'm sparring great fighters as well, you know, and they're teaching me a lot. They're teaching me a lot. It's the craziest thing. It's just, I'm learning all over again.
Wow, that's crazy. That's crazy to hear that. And hopefully when people watch this, you know, see this video, you know, they'll take that all in, that you're still learning almost 20 years into your pro career. And, you know, I mentioned Jorge Arce. When you beat him, you're 30 years old, and you're top 5 pound for pound, KO of the year, and fighter of the year. I mean, that must have been a hell of a year for you.
Yeah, no, you know, I was just on top of the world, man. I mean, that was the year fighter of the year, you know. And that's the biggest thing you can never have in boxing, you know, voted as the best fighter of that year, you know. And not a lot of guys get those, you know. If they do, they get it consecutive years, you know. But there's only a few that does that, you know. And now, you know, I was blessed enough to perform in that year.
Yeah, so let me ask you, Nonito, I've always wondered about the lighter weight classes. You know, you got like the 108, the 112, 115, 118, then 122, et cetera. 3 or 4 pounds, right? Some people may say, oh, that's not a lot of weight. But how much difference does those 3 or 4 pounds make for guys like yourself?
It makes a big difference. It makes a big difference, because, you know, um, we're wearing smaller gloves, you know. And when you're gaining a lot of weight, um, you know, you have good strength early on, but then you will start to slow down in midway through, you know. And the guys who, you know, there's always a pros and cons into it, but the big difference is that being little, we have such little space to cut weight, you know. The bigger guys, they don't really care, you know. They'll lose 20 pounds like nothing. For us, it's like that's like a limb, you know.
Right.
So it makes a big difference with the 4 or 5 pounds or 3 pounds.
Okay, so with that being said, you went as high as featherweight, I believe,
Yep.
126.
Yep.
And now you've been coming back down and still a world champion. I mean, like, explain that. I mean, that resurgence, I think you alluded to it earlier, just your training and the mental part of it, but how are you able to come back down so late in your career?
Um, you know what? Hold on, let me just turn this thing off. Okay. You know, I think for me was how I guess I have to say it's mental strength. You know, a lot of times we think that it's the physical aspect of boxing, you know, and the talent and all that stuff. But all of that is broken down of how strong a person's mind is. You know, we are only as good and our body is good as our mind can be. And so I think for me, you know, not registering time in my body that allows me to fight like I'm still 21 years old, you know. And I have that mental strength that this is who I am, and this is what I believe I am. And I think that's what allows me to perform the way I do, because I don't wake up with aches, you know. For a few years ago, like several years ago, like 4 or 5, maybe 6 years ago, I would wake up with joint pain, you know, with knee pain, with ankle pains, with hip and back pain. You know, I don't wake up with any pains anymore, you know. And I think that I started to eat healthy. I started to do a lot of meditation. I started to see myself for who I am. I got into a level of mental fortitude that I just feel good, man. I wake up, I feel good, you know. As you can see, I'm always grateful for everything, you know.
Right.
You know, because I am, you know. And I think that's the difference between my mindset now is I don't have anything to prove. I don't got nothing to want to go to, or I gotta get there, or I don't have to, you know. I'm gonna do it because I want to, you know. And I'm in the gym because I'm enjoying it. I'm fighting because I'm enjoying it, you know. It's not because I'm fighting because I need money, or I'm fighting because, you know, it's not like that anymore. So I think this is where I am, where I'm the limiter have been stripped off of me, where I can fight at my potential.
Yeah, it's interesting. You mentioned the diet, and I know fighters traditionally blow up in between fights. And, you know, I've covered Errol Spence here in Dallas, you know, since early in his career. This was the first fight he's had a nutritionist with him. And, you know, obviously he's been through a lot with the accident and so forth, but he said he's, you know, pretty much has never felt better. And I mean, diet is such a big part of it.
Yeah. That's the thing that people don't understand, even athletes don't understand, is that what you eat is like, it's your fuel, right? It's your fuel. If you're eating crappy food, you got crappy fuel, you know. And the people don't understand that what we eat signals our brain to think, right? So if you have crappy food, you're gonna have crappy thoughts, meaning that you're gonna have crappy mentality. That means you're gonna break down easily, you know. This is why I'm so much stronger than I am, is because I'm eating healthy, you know. I'm getting the proper rest, and I'm feeding my brain the right thing for it to think, you know. And it's very important, and that's how you create those mental strength. Not just thinking about it and learning and reading and going to seminars or whatever it may be, but it's what you eat and how you're going to feel for yourself.
Interesting. Very interesting. And another person, you know, and outside of that, another person, or a person who's played a huge role in your success, is your wife, Rachel, who's been in your corner. How much has she impacted your career?
I think she impacted me, not just my career, but the person that I am, you know. Not even think, I know that she has impacted me tremendously to become the person that I am, you know. When things got dire or dark, you know, there's so many part of me that just wanted to stop, you know. And this is why I think the way I do and I speak the way I do is because she's been a big influence in allowing me to grow for myself, you know. When, you know, I was just asked earlier, what does Rachel does for me? Well, does she push you? Yeah, she pushes me, but she one thing that she does is allow me to see the choices I make. Are you going to make a choice to win, or are you going to make a choice to be lazy today? You know, now it's in my hand, not her hand. When she pushes me, right? But she always makes me realize that it's in my hand that I'm making this decision to push. But because she allows me to grow in a person that I am, my own person, that the person that I am is because that I made the decision. This fight, I made a decision to be in this position, you know, because I worked hard, you know. And that's pretty much how important she is in my life as a person. But as a trainer, she has influenced me to make the choice for myself whether I want to win or not, you know. And therefore she gives me every weapon that I can, you know, in terms of strength and conditioning, in terms of strategy. It's all there, you know. And she's alongside me studying, and she studied for, you know, she gets me, hey, look at this scene, or this minute, and what do you see, you know. And I look into it, and she'll tell me. I'm like, oh well, okay, I missed that part, you know. And then we'll go back and forth with our own perspective, and we put it together. But because I made the choice before, I wouldn't be like, get the hell out of here, I don't want to know about that. I know what I'm doing, you know.
Right.
He's more kind of guy, you know. I was just like, you know, you know what, I know what I'm doing, get out of my way, you know. But now I'm learning to listen because it's been working, you know. And sometimes we have to have a different outlook, because for men, we are so driven in looking at one certain things, while women, they have their own perspective, you know. and that helps me out a lot. And I think that the dynamic is very different than a lot of boxers, but she's been a very big influence and key to my success, and the key to winning against Inoue.
Well, and no one can argue the success you two have had together, so it's obviously working. The other thing that works is your left hook. And I mentioned at the onset, my brother-in-law with the same last name from Nicaragua, Tino Donaire, so I'll give him a shout out. He knows I was going to be talking to you. But my wife is from Managua, Nicaragua. You know, her whole family is from there, from where the legendary, the great, would have been 70 a couple days ago, in fact, Alexis Arguello. Talk about what you learned from him and, you know, as a fighter, just maybe as a person.
You know, we used to watch a lot of fights, old school fights, and there was this guy, you know, his name was Alexis Arguello, and he was just this tall, you know, lengthy guy, and you know, I was always skinny too, so I resonated with his body type, you know, and then he just had this tremendous left hook, and you know, for a long time, the hardest. I would win nationals just jabbing straight. I didn't know how to throw any other punch. And when I started to transition to the left hook, I just didn't know how to do it. I just didn't know. It took years for me to learn how to throw left hook until I saw and emulated Arguello's left hook, you know, and that's where the foundation of my left hook comes from, is from Alexis Arguello, you know, and that's why I'm so grateful for those times, because it just so happened that, you know, he has a tremendous left hook, and now it was the guy that we were watching, you know, the old tapes, and you know, and it was, you know, it was great, and I had that same short that he had, the little blue, not suede, but like, you know, suede, shorts. You know, I had the same shorts. You know, I fought on those in the amateurs, you know, and I remember always just trying to emulate that left hook, you know. And of course, it got, after I started to get comfortable with it, then I started mixing up with a lot of fighters as well, like Trinidad, De La Hoya, even Tyson, you know. But the initial left hook was Alexis Arguello.
Did you ever get a chance to meet him?
No, unfortunately, I didn't, you know. But I you know, I have a lot of friends that know him or have met him, and how amazing he was, you know, and then I can just take that.
Yeah, my wife's sisters used to sell him candy back in Managua when they were young. So yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about him, and his son. And one of these days, as I mentioned, we'll all hook up. He's a great guy, and he's actually a Showtime producer. So he was part of the Showtime for the Spence Ugas fight.
Wow.
Yeah, Alexis Arguello Jr. But what's that?
I'm looking forward to that. That would be great.
Definitely. Listen, Nonito, let me switch gears real quick, just because it's in the news, and I just want to ask you and, you know, get your thoughts. Obviously, there's this big thing, you know, that came out with Daniel Kinahan, you know, MTK Global obviously just ceased operations. Bob Yalen, their CEO, quit 2 days before that. There's been talks about Probellum. You know, obviously your promoter and great friend, Richard Schaefer, with ties to that. What were your thoughts when you heard the news, and just kind of what's going on with the U.S. government trying to, you know, seize everything he's doing and has an award out there, a reward?
Well, for me, I never met the guy, it's funny because when they told me about the name, you know, if you had asked me a couple of days ago about it, I would not know who the guy was, you know. So I, you know, everybody has their own ways of things. For me, I talk to Richard. That's pretty much where my conversation goes. You know, if it's with my wife or you know, or Richard, that's pretty much it. I've never really known anybody else. I mean, for a while it was just me and Richard, and then we got with PBC, and then with Probellum. But that's pretty much how it is. I mean, we just barely got into Probellum. And I know that Richard is heading that, but when they mentioned the name, I wasn't familiar with it.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's interesting to see, you know, what's going on there, especially when the U.S. government gets involved. So we'll see how that shakes out. But speaking of Richard, I was listening to a podcast maybe a month ago, and he mentioned you and a potential, and I know you got a big fight coming up in June with the Monster, a rematch, but another potential fight with another guy, well, a guy from Nicaragua, that's followed in the footsteps of Alexis Arguello, and one Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez as a mega fight. Would you like that fight? And could you get down to 115?
I would love that fight, and I've never really had problem to go down to 115. It'll be a little bit of a effort like everybody else, because 118 is fairly easy for me to get. But 115, I know I can make that happen, because the last time I fought with Inoue, I was weighing at 116 and I have to drink a little bit of water to be up to closer to 118. So I know I can make that fight happen. I think that'll be a tremendous fight.
So you wouldn't mind kind of like maybe as a career ender, having that fight?
Oh man, I would want to do it anytime. I do want to get a title so that I can say that I have 5 division. But again, for me, my goal right now is to get all the belts in the bantamweights, and anything after that, I would be willing to open to dance with them.
That would be fantastic. And let me ask you, the fight he just had, I covered his fight against Estrada here in Dallas, that many people thought he won, including myself. And then I can't think of the guy's name from Mexico that just went up to challenge him. And a lot of people thought, Chocolatito was going to lose that fight. What were your thoughts on how he looked that night?
I mean, I thought he looked good. He looked good, and sometimes people's style, fights make style, right? So, sometimes his style was just the right for that kid. But he did an amazing job against that kid, to figure it out and to do what he did. It was great. He looked refreshed.
And when you see a guy like him fighting on the inside and just the nuance of, his movement and avoiding punches and then, throwing his punches, I mean, you don't see that every day.
No, I mean, especially for little guys, where we take a lot of toll because we're punching a lot with especially when he fought Rongusai. I mean, people were already have that inkling, or doubts, and then he showed up and he did what he did, and great for him. He's a great guy, so he deserved that performance because he does work hard.
Yeah, definitely. And I think everybody in boxing would love to see that mega fight with you and Chocolatito, the Filipino Flash versus Chocolatito. And we're going to wrap up here in a second. I'm with the living legend of the Filipino Flash, Nonito Donaire, Jeff Zimmerman with FightNews.com. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about VADA testing. I know you put something out on Instagram today. You're a huge proponent of drug testing. It seems like you get tested every 20 minutes. I don't think you can ever avoid it. But what are your thoughts overall, and just the sport and just kind of the whole testing process?
I mean, I don't mind it. Like for me, again, I've done the 365 year-round testing, and I don't mind any of that. I even paid my own pocket with that. It's something that I believe in, that fair games, fair fighting, but when they came in, I think they came in every week. I'm like, man, you guys got to give me when I'm not taking care of my kids or something. So
right.
I mean, they've been great. I mean, I think it's good for the sports in the first place. It's just that people are not so in tune to doing it.
You think there's still a lot of bending the rules, or people just kind of, getting around it?
I think so. I mean, you hear a lot of stories from camps and people of how things are, and sometimes they're saying, or there's a conversation here that, hey, they're doing something, they're doing this or they're doing that, from different camps, and I know that the human mind is just going to say, you know what, this is an advantage and this is how it is. Sometimes they'll sacrifice their integrity for winning, and I'm just that old school kind of guy where I don't compromise my integrity, and I want to prove to everybody out there, that this is who I am.
Yeah, and then you know, talking about proving, you want another fight with the monster in a way. I mean, I guess you surprised a lot of people in your first fight. How, I mean, tough a fight it was. You gave him all he can handle. What makes you want to fight him again, Nonito?
I believe I can beat. Reason why, you know, I'm stepping into this ring. The moment I stepped out of that ring in the last fight, you know, there was just a part of me that was just telling me you can beat him, you know. And I got back into the gym, got obsessed in trying to beat him, you know. And I believe that I can beat him, you know. And this is why I'm taking this fight, you know, because I know I can beat him.
And that fight is June 7th. Does it have a venue yet?
It's the same spot, Saitama in Japan, you know. You know, that's why I think they're calling it a drama in Saitama too. So, you know, I'm just excited, man. I'm coming in there with everything.
I know you're very prideful, and you know you always give a shout out to the Filipino people after your fights. What do those people mean to you? And do you and Manny Pacquiao have a kinship, both being from the Philippines?
I mean, we do have great respect for each other. You know, that's no doubt. For all the fans, I mean, I'm just very grateful for, you know, for their support. I mean, I talk to them on lives and YouTubes and all this other stuff, and it's fun to just kind of have a conversation with fans, you know, and I'm grateful for them. So yeah, no, 100%. I'm grateful for that.
How much longer for the Filipino Flash?
As long as it takes, man. I might come after Bernard's record. So, you know, I mean, as long as I feel good, you know, as long as I'm so in this level of mindset and mentality and desire, I'm gonna keep going.
All right. Well, you heard it here from Nonito Donaire, the Filipino Flash. He's a living legend, future Hall of Famer, continues to just, maybe it's not a surprise anymore, Nonito, but continues to put on big fights, going back after the monster, getting that rematch, and then hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll see the mega fight with the Nicaraguan living legend, Roman Chocolatito Gonzalez. It was an honor, a pleasure to interview you, to talk to you again, and I hope to see you down the road very soon.
Thanks, Jeff, and great talking to you always, man. And thank you for having me. And to everybody out there, you know, thank you for all the support of boxing, man. We're gonna give you some of the best fight coming in the coming years, man. So stay tuned.
Thanks, Nonito.
Thank you.